Hello and welcome to another Don't Plug In That Old Radio. And today on the bench we have a Sears Silvertone from I believe 1949. I've got so many radios in the house at the moment that I'm losing track of what is where or when. I believe it's 1949 time frame. This one's an AM/FM. Whoop! Knocked the camera over again. This one's an AM/FM set, and it looks as if underneath is another. This case looks black. It doesn't look mahogany, but this has been crudely painted by brush, and the paint pretty much just chips off. I'm hoping this cabinet will clean up nicely. The dial looks pretty grody, but you'll notice it's a little shiny down here. It's a brass plate. At first I thought it was rusty, but I put a magnet on it and I realized it wasn't steel. So I got some Brasso and a rag out, and I spent about 15 seconds, and in about 15 seconds I was down to clean shiny brass. So I'll get my Dremel out and we'll go over it, and we should be able to bring that faceplate back to like new. Soak the knobs in some paint thinner, and we should be able to clean this up pretty nicely. But this is another odd power supply. Let's make sure we get everything here. Let me drop the camera down a little bit and bring you in a little bit closer. Another odd power supply in this set. I keep running into a lot of stuff that I haven't seen as many years as I've been doing this. Now that I'm just concentrating on restoring these old sets, I'm finding a lot of new stuff. This has an auto transformer similar to, what was the radio with the auto transformer? I've had so many of them on the bench, but this is different. This is not a hot chassis set. This is what I'd probably call a lukewarm chassis set, because the filament string is actually not, or the AC line's not connected to the ground, and the filament string is running on an auto transformer here. Now we do have a 220k to ground, or chassis ground, plus a 0.05, plus a 002, 002, 002, 002, 004, and another 0.05. So this set will probably give you a zingle. That's a cross between a zing and a tingle if you're not careful, but shouldn't pass enough current to do you any serious harm. But what's interesting, or another thing that's interesting, 12AT7, 19T8, 12BE6, 6BJ6. If we total everything up, we got 12, 12, 12, and another 12. That's 48 plus 75 plus 19. It's 137 volt heater string in series. It's a series string radio, hence the step up on the auto transformer here. We have the AC line coming in on these two taps, and the heater string's taken from here to here. It's 137 volt string. Also, it's got an isolated B+. The second area of the auto transformer is the anode supply, or plate supply, and this radio is running 145 volts DC. It also has an unusual tube up here, a 19T8, which is a combination diode, triode, and dual diode. So there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 anodes in this tube, and 2 cathodes and a grid. So you have a triode, you have a diode, dedicated diode, and you have 2 detectors. And that's being used for the ratio detector on the FM, as well as the AM detector and AVC rectification. So there's a lot going on in this set. What else should we touch on before we open the radio up here? AM/FM switch. I guess that's about it. That's unusual. But this is the first time I've seen a heater string that's above line voltage, and using an auto transformer setup to boost the voltage up for the heater string. Kind of unusual. It looks for all the world to be a standard All-American 5, All-American 6 type of radio. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tubes in this set. But even though it's series string, it isn't directly connected to the chassis. Again, except for a couple of depth capacitors and, you know, some resistors. So, looking at this, it's plenty dirty. In fact, it's very dirty. Looking in here, this looks like a vacuum clean filter. It's so packed with dust inside here. But let's see what we've got. That's not good. That was not good. No screwdrivers in reach. There we go. We'll see if we can gently pry the knobs off. Hopefully we don't break anything. Oof, good and stiff. There. There's the volume and AM, FM. Oh, no wonder they're coming off hard. These are all corroded. And let's see. That's on the ground. I'll just take the screws out here. I'm hoping this cabinet cleans up nicely. But we're going to see what the inside of this thing looks like before we go too much further here. And I won't be doing a lot on this tonight. It's already coming up close to 9 p.m. But I did, this came in this afternoon, and I did want to take a look inside because I ordered this set because it's AM, FM. And we have a new toy on the bench. If I swing over here, we have a new Leader LSW 333, which is a sweep generator, and it does FM as well as television. Of course, I'm not doing any TV work, but I bought it because it's got a crystal controlled 10.7 megahertz, and it's a little bit newer than my precision apparatus units. I'm hoping it's a little bit less drifty. That unit, I got lucky. That came in with all of the original cables, the original owner's manual, and there's not a scratch on that thing. It is absolutely spotless. So I've got hopes. It does work. I ran a couple of quick tests on it, and it does function. So we'll get to use that on this radio and do an FM alignment. Ah, the great reveal. And it appears, oh my goodness. I gotta show you this. Look at the inside of this thing. Holy crap, is that full of dirt. Ah, somebody's chipped away the opening on the cabinet here for some reason. That's pretty hacked up. Actually, it looks like they did that to clear the dial. The indicator, the little needle on the dial. And it looks like I can remove the speaker grill cloth with 4 clips, so that's good. I'll be able to clean this up. I'll be able to put the paint remover all over this and remove the paint. We'll set this down here on the floor. And we have what appears to be a 100% original radio. From the looks of it, yeah, I can't get that light down here. Maybe I can get this one down a little bit. Looks like we have our original filter cap. I don't see a name on it. There it is. There is a name, excuse me, but it's obscured. At any rate, it's fitting in the clip that's in there. We have a couple of those flexible resistors. Let's hope those are good. But it looks like every other capacitor in here is original. I see a lot of tarnish on the silver on the oscillator coil, but that's alright. Silver oxide's better conductor than copper is. We have a capacitor with its guts blown out down here. Good grief, both ends of it are blown out. So we'll have to change some capacitors, and I'll take a look at those ones that are basically, well, they're not across the line, but they're line to ground. Those .05s are going to be suspect. I want to check that one. That one, we'll probably clip them out. The 002s are probably disc ceramics, I'm hoping. There's a lot of ceramic disc capacitors in here. 005, yeah, I'm going to guess that they're either mica or oh, is that wax? No, that's just discoloration. Okay, I'm going to change some caps. We'll put some power on this and see where we... Oh boy, look at the size of the speaker. That's a tiny... Oh my goodness. Look at the dirt. Okay, this is going to get a... yeah, this is going to have to go out and get blown out and cleaned up before I go any further. In fact, I'll probably go so far as to pull the antenna off of this. Mark where the wires go. Whenever you pull one of these antennas off, make sure you get the phasing correct when you put it back. It can make a difference. And it's better than struggling trying to figure out what went wrong. Just make sure you put them back. But man, this thing is absolutely grody inside. And I can't get over the size of that tiny little speaker. Anyway, that's my next move. Clean up some of the mess, and we'll take it. And I just realized now that the antenna's off and I'm looking at this thing, this has got those IF transformers that typically have silver mica disease. So we may have a bit of a challenge on our hand disassembling those and replacing the capacitors. Keep our fingers crossed. And we're going to have to change the filters in this before we power it up. When I turned on the unit, it started with a high current draw and then dropped off, and it sat at 5 milliamperes for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then started climbing. I don't know if you probably can't see the needle moving, but the current's continuing to go back up, and the light up there is getting brighter and brighter and brighter. So the filter capacitors are way past their sell-by date, and we'll have to change those out before we try anything on this set. So I've got some work to do, and I'm not going to bore everybody with watching me solder. We'll take care of swapping out those capacitors and come back. Needed to give my back a break and my eyes a rest from working on the chassis, so I grabbed the cabinet over here and did a couple of experimental things. And this is going to clean up pretty nicely. There's some minor scratches here and there. This used to be, I don't know what to call that, ivory? I guess ivory. And somebody painted it white or off-white at some point. But I discovered, because they'd mixed paints, are we high enough to see this? Probably not. Let me raise the camera up here. Oh, that's the extent of that part of the tripod. Let me raise the light. I got you up high enough to see what's going on now. This is just a spudger that you use for breaking into electronics. Now one edge is sharp and the other edge is rounded. And I discovered that all I have to do and the paint is pretty much coming off. Now, if you're going to try this, don't try it on the top of your cabinet. Try it down here on the bottom first. Make sure you're not scratching the bakelite. But as it turns out, I softened this up with some 1200 grit paper, so there's actually no edge. It's just a very abrupt radius. And while this is messy, I've got quite a mess going on the floor over here. We'll vacuum up shortly. This is going to take most of this old paint right off. I've even taken it off the front. Now the next trick is going to be getting inside between the grill slats here. Of course, I'll pop this off, but I think 90% of this I'm going to be able to do chemical free. I'm probably going to need the chemical softener. Get it out from between the grill slats. And I'll warn you, this is messy. Stuff flies everywhere, but it's a whole lot faster and a lot more environmentally friendly than filling rags up with paint stripper. And once you've got it to this point, grab a paper towel here, some IPA, and I'm using used IPA here. This is stuff I've used for cleaning electronics at some point, but it removes the rest of the residue. And of course I'm doing this real quickly here. And then a little bit of Tech Wax 2000 on top of that, and it's going to clean right up. So that's good news. The cabinet can be saved, and as I mentioned earlier, this is going to buff up once I get it off. And you can see the residue here. Pretty much rubs off with rubbing it with IPA and a little rubbing action. You could probably try lacquer thinner. It might be quicker, but I'd try it on the bottom first to make sure you're not going to ruin the finish on the Bakelite. But the IPA is pretty benign. And what's left on there will come off with relative ease. And this ought to polish right up. You can see what the top looks like here. Okay, that was just a little interlude while I gave my eyes a break, and I figured I'd show you that the cabinet's going to be savable. While we're looking at cabinets, this is the second triad. I've got most of the work done on the interior. The veneer has been removed, and this is the base material. There was a good split along the top, so I've got that gluing and clamped with a good plate to make sure it comes out nice and flat. I got lucky when I took the radio out of the chassis. The missing piece of wood was underneath the chassis. How it got underneath there mixed in with the wiring, I don't know, but I had all the pieces to put the slats back together, so we lucked out on that. So the next step will be get the veneer on here and make a new lens or bezel glass or whatever you want to call it. The one that came out of there is intact, but it's not in real good shape, so we'll make a new one of those, and then that guy can join its brother that's sitting right there, and we'll have a pair of them. This one has tone control and the other one doesn't, but other than that, they're very similar construction. Okay, back to the repair on these. We're back on the bench with the chassis. I had to sit here and ponder for a few minutes where I left off on this, because I've got 4 radios in the queue at the moment, and I've been jumping back and forth depending on what I was doing and, you know, what I had available for parts and so on and so forth. Plus, the last couple of days I've been outside with a pickaxe chopping 4 to 6 inches of ice off the end of the driveway. When the town, the last couple of times they went through and paved the street, it's now above the level of the end of my driveway, and I end up with a swimming pool down there in the wintertime that freezes over. The water has nowhere to go. But anyway, that's my problem. When I replaced the filter caps, this was a 4-section capacitor, and I was like, where am I going to stuff all of these caps, get them out of the way? Sitting there staring at them, I realized that they would probably fit inside of the old housing. So I drilled the guts out of the old filter cap and managed to stuff all 4 filter capacitors, 220s, a 40, and a 10 inside the old housing. And one of them is just about poking out the end down here, but I filled the end with hot melt glue just to secure everything. And that got those out of the way. I didn't have to worry about mounting everything, and I used the old colors that were the red, black, blue, and yellow that originally were there. Thought there was a green, and oh yeah, there's a green down there as well. So that got that out of the way, and I was able to stuff them up in the corner back where they originally lived, and didn't have to worry about mounting them or finding a home for them. So that's been done, and that's taken care of. So I guess we're ready to try putting power on this. I haven't made it any further than recapping it, and I got distracted by a couple of other projects. That radio came in from Vic. I wanted to get that taken care of. But let's put some AC on this and see what kind of issues we come up with. Lately we've been getting a lot of interesting problems. It seemed like in the beginning of this series, every radio we picked up, as soon as we recapped it, it was ready to rock and roll. And then things began getting a little more difficult and involved, which is kind of fun. Means I get to do some troubleshooting. Let me get this thing plugged in. I'll get you guys moved over here so that I can get over to the Variac. Let me get everything moved. We're plugged in. The radio is on. The Variac is hot. We're on dim bulb. Is that in frame? Yep, I guess it is. And we'll start bringing voltage up here. There's 30 volts, and we're about 100 milliamperes and dropping. 40 volts. This should wake up. Yep, there it goes. Actually, that's going to have less voltage on it than this meter because of the dim bulb. But things are looking okay. At 40 amp, 130 mils, that's acceptable. Just can't get over how tiny this little speaker is. And I took advantage of some time. I marked out where the FM and AM alignment marks are, because there's no whoop, starting to get some noise. There's no reference marks on the front of this. All of the dial markings are on the cabinet. So I had this in and out of the cabinet 3 or 4 times so I could mark all the alignment points. When I hear humming, it must not know the words. Ark, 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 ark. I know, don't quit my day job. Alright, I don't know if we're on AM or FM. Let me click this into full power. We're only drawing 230 mils. Oh, there we go. Just needed a little more juice. $115. It's 360 milliamperes. Again, I don't know what band I'm on here. It must be FM. Ah, that must be AM.
Indoor security camera.
Oh, we have activity.
Virginia this afternoon again pitching its Build Back Better program, focusing on skyrocketing prescription drug prices. The president told a community college crowd in Culpeper, Virginia, that with the stroke of a pen, he could cap insulin costs at $35, and importantly, let Medicare negotiate drug prices, which is currently not allowed. President Biden said his legislation would hold drug companies accountable for what he called absurd drug prices.
Drug companies that increase their prices faster than the rate of inflation.
All right, this full line, 125.
This will help us end the days when drug companies could increase their prices with no oversight, no accountability.
He said, for example, if a pharmaceutical company invented a cancer-curing drug, it should be treated as a utility.
Yeah, I'm probably hearing my... Yep, that's what we're hearing.
Earlier,
Stupid
the
camera.
president again promised to act to bring gas prices down.
The price of gas went up, you felt it.
One of these days I'm going to have to build a real power supply for this camera and get rid of this Chinesian piece of junk.
We were able to do the things I'm talking about here.
I opened up the switching supply and looked inside. They had left out the common mode choke. They had left out the across the line noise suppression cap, and 2 filter capacitors were missing. And I added all of them and it still sounds like crap. So
The state to abandon mask mandates effective immediately, but like many other states, Governor Steve Sinson.
let's see here. 455 kilohertz IF. And we get to do an FM alignment on this one as well, which will be something I haven't done on camera in a long time. Okay, the AM end does not have an RF amplifier, so this won't be a super ultra sensitive set. Of course, the FM end does have an RF amp. The AM section comes directly into the mixer tube, the pentagrid converter, as is common for many of the All-American 5 sets. But we have a 6BJ6 up here, RF amplifier, that's strictly for the FM. And we have the FM mixer oscillator, and then it combined to an AM IF amp and FM IF amp, and IF for FM here. It says just FM. The other one says AM and FM. Where's, do I have an... Yeah, I guess we're only going to have one IF amplifier. But we got 2 for the FM. And then we go to our detector over here. Don't mind me. I'm drifting off thinking, trying to think ahead of what we're going to do. Yes, tick, 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 tick. I can hear my electric fence controller outside. You wouldn't believe the aerobatics that a squirrel can do when they get across the electric fence controller. Kind of fun to watch. They were chewing the living daylights out of my fascia boards on the side of the barn, or my garage. Got a big gambrel garage out there I call the barn. 2 stalls downstairs, and then you can drive around up the hill and back and drive into the top, so there's a stall and a half upstairs. But I had a bird feeder out there, and the squirrels would get up on the roof and hang over the rain gutter, and they couldn't get to the bird feeder because I had a shield over it, but they figured they could chew their way through the fascia board and get to it. So I put a metal bar on the edge of the rain gutter, and another metal bar down near where they hang trying to get to the fascia board. And they learned pretty quick not to climb up there anymore. After a couple of them got knocked halfway across the yard, they decided that was a bad move. And I leave it on at night. Well, the bears are hibernating now, but I had a bear come in the yard this summer a couple of times and knocked down a couple of the bird feeders, so those are wired up too to the electric fence controller. All right, enough yibber yab. I'm gabbing away here trying to think of what I should do next. And what happened to our AM? Oh, there we go. Not a very hot receiver. This time of night, this thing should be jumping off the table. Yep, camera noise. This does have facilities for an external antenna for the AM. I don't think my little supports here are affecting it that much. I put a couple of bars back here so I could lay it on its back without breaking this antenna piece. Alright, let me get set up, do an IF alignment, quit waffling around here. Alright, we were getting ready to move on to the alignment of the AM and the FM on this set, the AM alignment and the FM, but I realize I'm coming up well over half an hour at this point. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things and then break here because I want to spend some time on the FM alignment, going through that thoroughly, because it's something that doesn't get covered a lot. And a lot of people are afraid to dig in and go after the FM alignments on these. So we'll have some tips and show you how that's done. It's not really all that bad. It is a little intimidating getting your feet wet, but one of the things I wanted to touch on was, in the process of getting ready for thinking about alignment, I said I better test all the tubes the way my luck has been going lately. This 6B-J6, which is the RF amplifier for the FM portion of the radio, and this 12AT7, which is an IF for the FM section of the radio. Both of these, well, half of this tube had a serious heater to cathode leak, and this one had a serious heater to cathode leak, which probably would have given us fits when it came to alignment time. Fortunately, I had both of these guys in stock, so these are going in the trash. They're done, sadly. Nothing you can do about it. But I wanted to show you this guy. This is the coupling capacitor between the first audio and the final audio amplifier. And it looks like it's had a disastrous meltdown. The funny thing is, of all the capacitors I pulled out of this radio, this is the only one that tests good. I clipped this out thinking, yeah, this thing had a serious meltdown, and then realized where it was, and I said, I can't believe enough current passed through this to do that. I think it's just the fact that it was up against the bottom of the chassis near the audio output tube, which gets pretty warm, and whatever plastic they used to mold this was just not up to the heat, and it just shrunk up. But it tests perfectly. It's a 0.01 capacitor, and it reads 0.01 on the money, and it's a 400 working volt, and it was actually leak free until I pushed it to the 500 volt limit, and then it broke down at 500 volts. So this capacitor was actually good, the only one in the radio that was, and the one that looked like it was going to be the worst problem child. Amazing. Okay, pro tip of the, I don't know, week, month, year. Don't always trust your schematics. As you do this over time, you're going to gain some experience, and you're going to start noticing things that maybe don't look right. I try whenever possible when working on these sets. I've got another schematic on order for this radio. It should be in a couple of days, but I'm going to have to move ahead without it. While I was looking through this set and testing the tubes, I yanked them all out and I went to put them back in, and as I was plugging in the 35W4 and the 50C5, I started to plug them into the chassis, and I said, wait a minute, the 35C5 was here and the 35W4 was here. I'm pretty sure, I'm positive of that. And I looked down underneath the chassis, and sure enough, these are labeled backwards on this schematic. This is a John F. Reiter. Now, in the same group of schematics for this radio, there's that picture is duplicated 50C5. There's another version of that picture. There's this one. And on this one, they're in the correct location. The 35W4 is near the transformer, and the 35C5 is further inboard. So, when you pull your tubes out, unless you have the actual diagram on the bottom of the radio, even if you have that, double check, because that can get you into trouble. And that's not the only one of recent history. This is the Traveler schematic. Remember the cute little Traveler radio that I restored a while back? And this schematic is wrong. This one here happens to be a Sam's PhotoFact, and this schematic is wrong. Coming out of the output transformer, the primary, the output transformer, it does not go here. This is supposed to, well, let me draw it in down here on the table. This connection is supposed to be over here. This is wrong. I know that for 3 reasons. I have, well, 4 reasons. 1, the radio wasn't wired that way. It was wired this way. 2 and 3, I have 2 other schematics for this radio that show it correctly wired over here. And 3, even on this schematic, they call for a higher voltage here than they have here. On pin 9, no, on the cathode of the 35L6, which would be, let's see, well, anyway, it calls for on the cathode, 35, here we go. It calls for 121 volts, and on the screen it calls for 87 volts. Now, the only way you're going to get those 2 different voltages is if this is being fed from here. So, there's another mistake. I find these all the time in these different schematics. So be very careful. The schematics aren't always correct. And you'll develop a feel for that over time as you work on more and more of these sets. Okay, I am going to close this one for now. We'll pick this up again on the next video. We will do a complete AM alignment, and then we'll move on and do a complete FM alignment and try to explain it clearly enough to hopefully eliminate some of the fear you might have about jumping into one of these and doing the FM alignment. It takes some basic test equipment, and a lot of times the schematics will give you 2 options, doing it with a standard signal generator and doing it with a sweep oscillator. Now we're going to be doing it with a sweep oscillator, which is the preferred method, but the instructions that come with doing it on a standard signal generator are usually pretty straightforward. But we're going to show you what to look for with using a sweep generator. They're readily available. eBay's got a bunch of them, or the ham flea markets. They're always laying around, and we'll take you through that. So for now, I'm the radio mechanic. I'm going to enjoy my hot cup of coffee here. I'm probably going to go over and do some more work on the triad cabinet. It's coming along nicely. It's coming along slowly because you have to wait between steps. You know, you put something on, glue it, wait 24 hours, sand a little bit, find something else needs gluing, wait 24 hours. That's what drives me crazy about cabinet work. This, I can go in and hit it. But at any rate, you don't want to hear about all of that. We'll see you on the next one, and until then, take care, stay warm.